before we start our discussion, before we start our talk, let's all together chant the Namaskara and observe the 5 precepts. And I'm going to explain today a little bit about the meaning of the Namaskara also. So we're going to do that after. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, I hope that you had a good week. I hope that sometimes the little exercises and homeworks that I'm giving you, you're thinking about that, you are trying to apply that into your life, because that will really help you to make some progress and transform your life step by step. That's how I have always done this with my teachers' advice. And sometimes it can be things about the Dhamma, sometimes it can be things you learn here, sometimes it is just the way we think, our mindset, how we treat other people, whether we react based on our narrow mindset that sometimes arises, or whether we try and look at it from a different point of view. Maybe we overcome our own barriers sometimes, right? Because we all have a comfort zone, and according to that comfort zone we can do things or we can't. And that's when we feel the resistance. Sometimes we like to do things for others until a certain limit. And when that limit is being challenged, when we come to that border, then we feel the resistance. And resistance always something that pushes us back. And we stop there. Actually, we need to realize that this resistance that we feel, is only a mental barrier. So that means the way we think has given us this feeling, this is how much I can do, and beyond that I can't do it. But little by little you should realize that this is not something that you are. This is not who you are. This is just who you are at this moment. Or better to say, this is just the effect at this moment based on the causes that are present. So your best today is not the best is not your best tomorrow, because what you call your best today depends on the causes which are present today. But if you change the causes, if you add some causes, in other words, if you practice certain things, your best tomorrow will not be the best today. In other words, there's not really something called a fixed personality, something that this is you and that's how much you can go. So now I told you that I wanted to explain you about the Namaskara. I don't know whether I can explain you all the meanings and everything there is to say about the Namaskara and about why we do certain chantings in our sermons, why these things have become a tradition. All I know is that people have been chanting, people have been doing offerings for many centuries, and that was good and it had a meaning and people gained some merits. But there was a deeper reason why people did all of these things. And we should understand a little bit about that, so that we can elevate our mindset And that is the most important thing. As I told you before, it's never about what you do in your lives, much than it is about why we do things. And the same applies to why we chant the Namaskara, why we take the 5 precepts, and what it means to us, and the goal behind. So, for me personally, when we are chanting the Namaskara, my teacher always calls it a pledge of allegiance, or that means it's a kind of a determination. At least, for example, when we are chanting the Namaskara today for this sermon, then we want to do something, or we want to aspire to something for this sermon at least, or for today. So we want for this sermon, we all together, me and you, both of us included, we want to consider the Buddha our teacher for this sermon. That means we want to have a mindset. What kind of a mindset should we have to consider somebody our teacher? It should be the mindset of a student, right? A student is something we can become in our minds, right? Because yes, if you go to school or if you go anywhere, you can officially be a student. Let's say a school has 800 students. But just because you are registered as a student, does it mean that anything is going to happen? Just because you sign up for a class, does it mean that you're going to learn anything? You will learn as much as you are open to learn. You will learn as much as you are willing to learn based on how much you let somebody give you an input. So you must be open. You must be open to receive. You must be open to consider. This is one aspect. I don't think that I have to remind you to be open-minded. I feel that you're all open-minded, so that's good. Sometimes, but not always. That is important to remember. But also you should not simply take things by blind faith as well, right? So just because I'm sitting here, just because I'm a monk, I'm talking to you, I'm telling you something, doesn't mean that what I say is the truth, right? I could tell you something which is totally wrong. And if you were to believe me doing that, would that be something that would benefit you? No. It would, I could lead you astray. I could lead you in the wrong path. If I tell you something that maybe I believe really, really fully, but if it is not true, then you will not get anything from that. So you need to consider yourself. You need to apply for yourself everything I tell you, and you need to see the benefits for yourself. That's all. That's what we all have to do. But in order to consider the Buddha your teacher, you need to be a student, not necessarily a follower. You need to be a student. Then this thing will make sense to you more and more. So also, when we chant this Namaskara, it is something like, now I want to do something. I want to try and do something while at least I'm here. And that is to find the truth and to look within myself. And when we talk about these qualities that we are chanting, when we are chanting the Namaskara, for example, so I can't say I know all the meanings of all the words, but from what I know, Namo Tassa means something like inclining towards. That means, yes, putting our mindset in a certain direction, right? So, and then the qualities are there. Bhagava, Namo Tassa. So Bhagava is a very deep meaning. one meaning that I know is to dissecting things. Dissecting things like means looking beyond the surface of what we all can see, right? Little by little, that's what we're going to do in this sermon. We're going to look beyond the surface of the world that you come to know and that you come to live in. What you experience, what you feel, and what you see around you, what people tell you, how things are, and what you should do. That is something you can do when you're open-minded, when you understand the problem which we are in, and with the guidance of our teacher, with the guidance of the Buddha, we can go this path. For example, we used to talk about happiness, and we will continue to talk about happiness more. Happiness means the happiness that you all experience, happiness you experience in day-to-day life, the happiness that people promise you wherever you go, in the supermarket, or when you do an investment, when you travel, when you do basically anything in your lives. There's a promise. The promise of happiness. And most people don't dare to, or they never look beyond that surface of happiness, right? Because the Buddha used to say that this suffering that he's talking about is actually covered by a layer of happiness, right? So when he talks about suffering, and later you will also learn that when he talks about dukkha, it is actually not about suffering that the Buddha has spoken. It is something very much different. It is something much, much deeper than suffering. When he talks about these things, or when he talks about the Four Noble Truths of suffering, he never wanted to say simply that, this life is suffering. There's a way to understand that, what that means, but of course, it doesn't really align with all of our experiences. Most people wouldn't say, I guess, most of us wouldn't say that everything in our life has been full of suffering, and we would never accept that. And that's also not what he used to say. Because, in the time that he was living, he himself was growing up in very good conditions, in a good family, in very wealthy conditions, and most of his royal clan, the Shakyats, they used to ordain under his sasana after he gave sermons. So something happened when they listened to a sermon. Before that, they were really happy. They had maybe wives and children, they had money, they had power, wealth, everything they wanted. But when they listened to the Buddha, they changed their lives. So much so they become monks and nuns. So much so that I think his cousins, who then also went on to become monks, I think Ananda Thero and Anuruddha Thero, I don't know all the names, but some of them, they realized the problem so much so that in order to make this step, they were prepared. For example, symbolically, they asked the charioteer, I can't remember his name, do you know that name? Was it the charioteer? No, the Chandra. No, it was not the charioteer, right? But it was some kind of servant, or I don't know exactly. Anyway, they asked him to ordain first. Because now they were fighting against something else, right? They were fighting against their ego. Started to do that. They started to fight against their ego because only then would you would you want somebody else to take the first step and you willingly take the second. Because that in that moment, it never feels comfortable. It never feels comfortable for something that you want, which is recognition, appreciation, or kind of seniority. For that to ask to give it to someone else is never the easy thing. But if you're willingly doing that, then that means you must have changed your mindset. You no longer run after this happiness that everyone runs after, which is, for example, to be famous, to be rich, or to be the best. These are the simple happinesses. These are the obvious happinesses we all experience, we all know. People run after these things more today, more so than ever, right? If you look into social media, most people think it's so simple to be happy, just go and become famous or rich or become the best at school, have the best grades, the best exams, and everything will be okay. All the while, what people are actually unknowingly doing in this way is feeding this vicious cycle of suffering, or you could say this vicious cycle of jati. Jati, however, in this case, what I mean with this is it's the sense of self, feeding a sense of self, right? We can say feeding ego. That's what happens, and for that there will be, so what the Buddha tried to say, this sense of self we experience is actually a disease of the mind. You will get to know and understand the deeper concepts later. If I say the sense of self, then I am also talking about something you may be more accustomed to, maybe can relate to more, which is wanting, right? So actually, I'll give you an idea. So, in the last weeks, we talked about wanting, and we will continue to do that for a while, I think. Not every day, not all the time, but because this is for me the basics of Dhamma. Understanding what is wanting, how it works, how does this process work in your mind? Process of wanting. What I wanted to explain you now is that it comes out of something we call the sense of self. The most important point in this word is, the most important point here is the first one. It's a sense. So it's later. I'll give you an analogy. If you go to a desert, and if you are in the middle of a desert, sometimes you see water in the distance. So you see water, you see something shining, and when you look at it, you feel, if I go there, I'll be able to drink water, because water exists there, 100 meters in front of me. And then what do? You will walk there and you will check. But when you come there, what do you find? Actually, nothing is there. So Has that water ever existed there? No. But haven't you seen it? Yes. But what you saw was not water, right? What you saw was actually the result of a certain process that happened, right? What was that process that happened? We call it, scientifically we can explain, it is due to the light and due to hot air, which, when you have hot air rising up from the ground, that can cause some kind of reflections of light, right? So that is what actually happened. So that means one thing is to feel at the beginning, when we were in the desert, the first time we saw the water, what did we believe? We believe that water actually exists there. There's water there. But then after we got to understand that this is not water. This is called what? This is called a mirage. That's a name of a phenomenon. It is a certain process which happens, which makes us sense that water is there. So it's a sense of water, right? Not water. Water is not there, but you sense it, which means it gives you the impression of there's water. It is something like that with this. We are going to discuss the details later. So I just want to give you an idea. But wanting is something you can understand, right? The wanting is something you can feel. You feel that you want something. It could be all kinds of things. You want to see something. You want to hear something. You want to taste, smell, touch something. You don't want to see something. You don't want to hear something. All these kind of things you experience, I hope. But I wish you don't. I wish for you to no longer feel this wanting. Because But please don't understand me wrong. When I say, I wish you no longer feel wanting, I don't want to say that I wish you are no longer alive. Because some people think that wanting and life goes together. You can't have one without the other, right? So I'll draw it out for you. So we can look at four situations. One, we can look at a person who has a life, that means he's alive, and he has wanting. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? A person who has life and who has wanting. That is a normal person, right? A person has life and he has wanting. We call this a normal person. Most of us who are like that. Then there is now let's think about it. Can there be no life but wanting? Can this be? Does it make sense? You want things but you are not alive? This makes no sense, right? Because for wanting, for you to want something, you need to be alive, right? That means you need to feel, you need to see something, you need to hear something, you need to smell something, you need to touch something, or at least you need to think about something. So when I talk about life, I'm talking about 6 senses, 6 kind of experiences. Seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking. On top of that, you might or might not have wanting in your mind, okay? everything that you see, is everything you see combined with a wanting? For example, if you look at this pen, is it necessary for you to look at this and also you want this? Not really. Not really, right? You can look at this and that's just it. You just look at it. You know that this is a pen, but you don't want to own it, or you don't necessarily want to see this, right? When I showed this to you, did you want to see this? No. But still you see. Why? Because for you to see this, it doesn't matter whether you want to see this or whether you don't want to see this. What matters is whether the causes and the conditions are present for you to see this, right? Or for seeing to happen. If I show you this pen, and if you have your eyes open, and if your brain works properly, your nerves work properly, and all these kinds of causes, now then the seeing of this will happen. Whether you want it or whether you don't want it has nothing to do with that, right? Can you understand this? That is life process. So you don't necessarily need to want to see this for seeing to happen. That is life but no wanting. So there is a kind of a way of living where life happens, where you are alive, where you can experience the world, but you don't have any wanting, right? That is what we call an arahant. An arahant, the totality of this, or the culmination of this, we call an arahant. Actually, there's no such thing called an arahant, because there's only what we'll discuss this also in more details. There's only process of the mind, and when we talk about the process of the mind, you can imagine it's something like this. It's like a vibration. When you see something, when you see this pen, what happens is, actually every moment we see and hear a lot of things, right? Think about just in 1 second. How many things do you perceive in 1 second? In this 1 second right now, can't you see me? For example, when you look at my hand. When I'm moving my hand like this. So you see this hand at how many positions in this 1 second? You see it here, then you see it here, then you see it here, then you see it here and here and here. So you see this hand in various positions. Each of these represent one moment of awareness, one seeing event, doesn't it? Imagine there's only one consciousness per minute, per minute. Then that would mean that you see this hand for 1 minute, then after you see another hand, and then after you see another hand. But you feel it's continuously happening, right? You see so many different things. So actually in 1 second, you see many pictures. And you hear many sounds, right? So there are many kinds of this happening within us every moment, every second. This could be seeing. This could be hearing. So this could be one of the 6 senses. This is what we call the natural process. The process which we call life. Life means to be aware, right? Life. How do you feel that you are alive? How would you describe living? You can see, think, smell, the senses. Without these, what does it mean, life? At least you need to think, right? At least that thought should happen for you to feel that you are alive, or that life happens to you, or that life happens. Okay. So now you understood that when I talk about alive, without wanting, I'm still talking about life. So you can live, but you don't have to live with wanting. Wanting is something optional, right? This is something that can happen with you, but there's something else that doesn't have to happen with you. Apart from this, there can be something more, right? And that is what we call wanting. For example, you can look at this pen and want to own this pen. You want to buy this. Or for example, imagine you're going along the street and you are smelling the smell of some kind of food. Now what happens in that moment? What can happen? You want to taste that food, right? So there's more than smelling there, right? There's also a kind of a temptation or a desire, something that pulls you towards the food. That is also there. So what I'm trying to tell you is that doesn't have to be there. It doesn't have to be there. You can imagine a day when you can walk through this shopping street or food street, and you can experience all of the different flavors, tastes, but nothing pulls you anywhere. I feel that means you can taste or not taste, both for you would be okay. You are not, there's no pressure within you that you feel. There's no, no force within you which pulls you towards doing something and which stresses you internally. Because that is what happens most of the times. As we talked about before, nowadays when people talk about enjoying their lives, one example I have is this example of pornography. I know very well from what people told me and just from understanding the mind that these are not things, and you can take anything else like smoking or simply watching TV. These are not things people do because they like to do them. As much as they say that they like to do that, these are actually things that people have to do, right? Because still I haven't explained you the Namaskara, I'll come to that. But there are so many other points we should think about. What do you think? Smoking a cigarette, watching TV, or take examples from your own life, or pornography. Are these things that people do because they like to do that or because they have to do that? Because there's a really good criteria to know whether it is because they like to do that or because they have to do that. I'll tell you this criteria. So think about anything in your life as well. Take some examples from your lives, right? Could be going on WhatsApp, using the internet, meeting your family, meeting friends, or some of your hobbies? Are these things you like to do, or are these things you have to do? No, most of the time people say, these are things I like to do. Then think about this. If it is something that you like to do, in other words, you are so free in not doing it, or in doing and not doing it, how about trying to do it, to not do it for a while, right? For example, if you say, I like to watch TV, at least maybe 30 minutes a day, I suggest to you, how about for a week you try not to do it? And if that not doing of watching TV for one week does not make you feel any kind of burden, stress or pressure, no nagging, no pulling you. You don't have to fight against yourself so that you don't watch TV, right? No feeling like maybe I should hide the TV remote. Maybe I should plug the cable. Maybe I should tell someone, you know what, I'm not going to watch for 1 week so that he or she can check on me. Nothing like that. That means you can sit in front of the TV, but it is turned off, and you have the remote in front of you, but you're okay. The temptation is there, but you don't feel, nothing pulls you towards doing it. So for 1 week, if that happens, then we can say it's something that you like to do. But is that the case in most of the things? This is the thing. Whatever people enjoy in their lives are not actually things they like to do. It's actually things they have to do. Right? So when people talk about their hobbies, then these are things they like to do for pleasure. But if you do something for pleasure, if you do something for happiness, then actually that means you do these things because you have to do them, not because you like to do them. That is something you really need to understand to realize a deeper problem within yourself, with yourself. The problem most people don't realize. They feel life is there to enjoy and things are there and I can enjoy, and what's the problem with these things, right? They don't realize that there's a deeper problem within them, which is what we call the wanting problem. So when we're talking about this quality of Bhagava, then actually it is kind of what we're doing right now. We are dissecting life based on the truth. And when we do that, we see what's really going on. And that helps to cultivate our wisdom. And this wisdom is actually the most important thing. I never want you to do more than, most importantly, cultivating your wisdom, cultivating your good qualities, cultivating your wisdom. The good qualities and doing merits will create the environment, will create a background on which you can plant a seed of wisdom, right? That's how you have to understand. So we have these 4 Brahmic abodes. These are the 4 foundations. Loving kindness, compassion, English words, I don't know even all of them, mudita, and upeksha. And this is the foundation, this is the environment For a seed to grow properly, you have to have the right environment, right? If you have a seed for a plant, it cannot just grow anywhere, right? You need to have the right environment. You need to have a field. Imagine this is like a field, a plot of land. You need to have soil, which is well nurtured. It has nutrients. You need the sunlight. You need the air. Temperature should be the right, and the weather condition should be good. And when all of these environmental factors are aligned, now you can plant the seed and it will grow. And when it grows, it will give rise to a tree, to a result. So wisdom is what we need. Wisdom will help you solve your problems. That's why I think in some kind of texts, wisdom is always described as a sword. Because it can cut through, something. I don't know exactly the details, but I imagine something like this. When you have a problem with a sword, you can cut that problem. You can cut it off, and then it's gone, right? So wisdom is something that solves our problems, and it is because we don't have enough wisdom that we have the problem, right? So wisdom here means our understanding, our realization of the Four Noble Truths. So in here together we can contemplate, and I will try to guide you step by step and tell you all the things you should be doing to improve that. That's what I can tell you based on your merits, based on our common merits, based on my development of the path and your development of the path and your merits and my merits, and then you will gain something, and then you need to follow that next footstep. For the next week you will go there, go along and do something, and so we progress. So Namo Tassa Bhagavata Arahang. Arahang means a mind which has no defilements, right? So actually we talked about this today. Wanting is basically representing all the defilements that you can imagine. Wanting can be raga, desha or moha. There's a deeper cause for these defilements, which we call the sense of self. This is something we're going to talk about later. But Arahang simply means ridding your mind of all wantings, right? Freeing your mind from all wantings. That is what we try to do. But don't worry, you don't have to stop. You can't pluck wantings out from your mind just like you try to pluck weeds from a field, right? When you have weeds on a field, now you can pluck them out. But you can't do that with wantings. So if there's something that you want, you can't just pull it out from your mind and say, so now I no longer want this. It doesn't work like that, because actually you will do a lot of harm to your mind. If you do it without proper guidance and without proper understanding. People have tried to do that, but the solution is another one. The solution that we're going to work on is based on causes and effects. Understanding how to eradicate wanting is something we have to understand, cause and effect. It's not very complicated, don't worry. I will explain to you in very simple ways. And then what we can do is use that procedure. Use a procedure with intelligence, based on causes and effects. So you are familiar with the idea of wanting, right? We talked about wanting, and we also talked about what happens when wanting happens. So maybe today I will try to explain you in a very simple way the process of wanting. I might not be able to explain you all the details, and we are going to go, I want to go step by step together with you. So you need to communicate with me, and you need to make sure, and if there's any question, you can also ask it, but I'll try to give you the clear idea of what this process of wanting is and how it happens and why it's important. So, if you remember, there was once a story I told you about when I was a kid. It was in the year 2002. I really wanted to buy a football. I don't know whether I told this story. Do we always want the same thing in our lives? Maybe recently you wanted to buy maybe a new dress. Maybe you wanted to eat certain things. Maybe you wanted to go to a certain place, right? For example, there was a time in my life I wanted to travel around and see another country. Maybe I wanted to travel to Sri Lanka. But when I was 6 years old, did I want to do that? No, when I was 6 years old, I wanted to buy some stickers to collect stickers for my sticker album, right? So that was the wanting then. But today the wanting is a different one, right? So when you were a kid, did you want the same things you want today? No. Therefore, there are causes why certain wantings happen. For example, when you are a kid, you are surrounded by other people who tell you about nice things that you should be doing. It's your association, right? The things and the people you associate can give you a view about things which are worthy to do, which are good to do, which you should be doing. For example, when I was 6 years old, friends I had in school, they were collecting sticker albums. And then they showed this to me, and then they told me that, yes, you should also be doing this. This is a really fun thing. You can collect a sticker album, then you have, and if you can complete it, that will be something really nice. In other words, this is something which can give you happiness, right? Nobody came and when I was 6 years old, maybe nobody came and told me you should be going and traveling here or there or something like that. Right? So based on the associations, certain views were adopted in the mind. Right? Some of you were there when we talked about this topic of views at one of the first sermons. But do you know what I mean when I talk about views? No? Views. Views is simply a belief or like, for example, I can tell you this pen is really great because, I mean, I can tell you something about this pen. Why? For example, I can tell you this pen has been used by a famous person. So now what I'm doing is I'm influencing you, I'm giving you some knowledge and some let's say, I tell you something about this pen. It might or might not be true. Essentially that's a view, right? For example, when I tell you how happy, how special this pen is, then there is something you might or might not believe. I mean, views are simply knowledge. that knowledge can be right or it can be wrong, right? That's something like views. So basically what happens when you go on the street is, what is advertisement? Advertisement is what happens when you watch advertisement, when you see posters, when you see people advertising products. They can't give you a wanting, right? They can't make you want something, because that is something you have to do. But what they can do is they can give you a view, right? For example, yesterday a monk came to me and he said, you are doing these kind of retreats with people and things like that. I don't really understand, I don't feel something for that, he told me. So he's doing other things in the monastery, right? So then he told me, can you tell me about why it's important, right? So so for example, if I tell you why it's important to be a good person, then I'm giving you views, right? I'm telling you about the benefits of being a good person. Now what happens with your mind is you might or might not take this view and accept it. And then you will operate on that based on that view. So right now what I'm doing is I'm influencing you with my experiences, with my views. So what you're associating right now is my views. We can't say my views, certain views, right? Certain beliefs about the world. So if I say it is not good to kill, then that's a view. Or I might say it's good to kill. That's another view. They can be right or wrong, right? So ultimately, I can give you a view which is based on truth, or it can also be a lie. I mean, I can tell you, let's say there's a friend, you and a friend, you meet with some friends, and one of your friends tells you, this other friend of yours, did you know what he did? He was blaming you, he was gossiping behind your back about you with others. He's not somebody to trust. So he just told you knowledge, right? Do you know that it is true? No. But it can influence you. So that's a view. If it can create within your mind at least a doubt about this person. Unless you really, really know the truth or the reality, you might be influenced by what he said. Only if you are very, very sure that no, he would never do that. And if you know him inside out, if you could read his mind as an example, then you can be sure and say, okay, he's just telling nonsense. So you will reject that view. But we are very easily influenced by views, whether they are right or wrong, because we cannot easily check them. And most importantly, because we have only a limited understanding of the world, right? So that's what happens in advertisement. People give you views. They tell you, this is something you should buy because it's something that can give you happiness. Like, imagine the advertisement for a movie. They're showing you a trailer and they're telling you about why it's so good to watch this movie. So if you take a wanting in your life, something that you started to want, let's say recently, in the last few years, were there not something that you started to want, but before that you never wanted them? Anything, right? For example, when I was a child, there was a day when I wanted to buy a certain football. It was a special kind of a football, for the World Championship in 2002. So when I was watching TV with my parents, they were showing this ball, and then after that, so that was one influence. I was watching TV, and the moderator, and they said, this is a very special ball. It's not like the others. It is flying in a different way, and look at the colors. It looks so different. So it's a really beautiful ball, and so on. And then a few days later, I went to play football with my friends, and then one of my friends had such a ball. And when I saw that, and when we played with it, I felt, it's actually different. And then I felt, I also want this ball, right? So you can see, now I wanted the ball, but 10 days before, did I want it? Was the wanting there? No, there was no wanting there. How did this wanting come to be? Association. Association and adapting views, right? We came to believe that it is something that it is good to have. Or when the same happens when you see fashion advertisement, people are wearing certain dresses. So what are they suggesting to you when there's a certain dress that they're showing? They are suggesting to you that this is a very beautiful dress, right? That is what they're suggesting to you. They are suggesting that it is something beautiful and good and valuable, whatever word you can resonate with more. These are all the same, yeah? Doesn't matter, same idea. It is something they suggest to you, but is it ever possible for this dress to be beautiful? Can it be? No, right? Because we discussed it in the last few weeks. There's nothing beautiful in this world. Beauty does not exist in a dress. So 10 dresses, no matter the way they look, no matter the color, no matter the form, none of them are more beautiful than others, because beauty is not something there, right? You can't talk about the beauty of a dress, because there's no such thing, right? It is just a dress, nothing more than that. But if somebody were to come to you and tell you, this dress, actually it is beautiful, then he's telling you something. He's suggesting he's suggesting to you something that is totally utter fabrication or fiction. He's suggesting to you a lie, right? So when the mind starts to take upon the view that this thing that I am seeing, or this thing that he or she is talking about, is something that is good to do, it gives happiness, then the wanting starts. Think about how it works with cigarettes. Or I remember, from what I heard, for most people, the first cigarette is not something they ever enjoy, or the first cup, or the first glass of beer. These are never usually things people enjoy. But repeatedly, after a while, people start to enjoy them. Even I remember when I was living in the UK for a year, I had an Italian friend there, and he introduced to me some kind of a music. It was a rock music from 1970s. And he showed me a song, and he said, you know, this song is really nice. It's really great. I love this song. So he showed me that song, and I listened to it, and I felt like, I don't know. I don't feel like that. Doesn't really have anything for me. So, but when I was listening to it more and more, after a few weeks, I started to like it. Suddenly it was great to listen to it, but before that it was not, right? So you can see, actually these experiences are so empty of beauty, empty of happiness, right? I want to explain you how it happens that suddenly we start to enjoy smoking. Suddenly we start to enjoy listening to a song. How it happens that we enjoy things that actually there's nothing there to enjoy. There's nothing in the song that you can enjoy. But still there's somehow this feeling of enjoyment. Don't you have that feeling? Have you experienced situations where the first time you did that, it was not really special, but over time, and because people keep telling you that this is something good, it starts to become something enjoyable, right? Yeah. So it seems like there's enjoyment there, but it wasn't there the first time we did it. So isn't that also another proof for the fact that the object itself has no enjoyment? Otherwise, it should give you the enjoyment even the first time you did it, right? So the first beer we drank was not very nice. It was bitter. But people keep drinking it, and then after a while they keep enjoying it, and suddenly it tastes good. But the first time it didn't taste good. So, and the beer never changed. I mean, they never changed the formula. They never put any more sugar or less sugar in there. It's the same thing, same recipe. Nothing changed. But you start to enjoy it now. So who added the enjoyment? The company, the manufacturer, or your mind? Your mind, right? So it came from within you, not from the object. So can you understand how it came from within you? Now I want to explain you how it happens, how that happens. That's what I'm trying to explain here. This is not complete, yeah? And we might not be able to complete it today, but there will be something more you will learn, and we'll go to it repeatedly, and then you will understand this. This is not very complicated. Anything you ever wanted in your life, you never wanted this from your first day that you were born, right? This wanting started to come to you after you associated certain people, watching TV, or being influenced by some sort of experience, which created within you this view. It might be reading a book, I don't know, which created within the mind this view: this is something good. This is something special. This is something that has pleasure. This is something that has happiness. It has happiness within. Now this view was there. It is only after this view was there that wanting started to happen. Right? Good. And of course, once this view is no longer there, then wanting will also no longer happen. Right? Once you fall out of love with something, because you start to realize that there's actually nothing there, the wanting will also no longer happen. Right? Because aren't there things you no longer want, but you wanted them some other day of your lives? Maybe the things you wanted as a child, playing with dolls. Is that a wanting that comes to you? Maybe not. So, once a mind has adopted the view that a certain object is pleasurable, a wanting for that object starts to arise. Right? So it's like this. It's like the mind, which is running very, very, very smoothly. It's like a machine which is running very, very smoothly in its own rhythm. Now, when this view is being given, it's like a turbo engine starts to run. It's like now the mind is going on high speed. So this is like the turbo mode. So from here on, now you no longer have a mind. Now you have a mind with wanting. Now you have a mind which is looking for something, right? A mind which is looking for this object. So before I wanted to have this football, I was playing with my friends and I went home and that was it. Now that I learned that this ball is really nice, it has happened, so it has something special. Now I wanted to have this ball. So now I was no longer happy with my life the way it was before. Now there was something I wanted. Another example is teenage girl. Before she gets to use social media and she looks herself in the mirror, she's sort of okay with herself. But after using social media, what happens? What happens through social media? Views are being planted in that mind. Once the view is there, now that the girl has started to believe that this is a beautiful face. This is makeup which can make me more beautiful. This is how I should be looking like. This is the dress I should be wearing. Now she goes to the mirror, the same like the day before, but what has changed is her views. So the dress she was wearing on the same day like before, she's wearing also today. Her face is still the same like yesterday. But now she wants, and now she has a model of how she could be like. So based on that, now what does she feel? She feels unhappy, right? She doesn't feel complete anymore. So therefore, what happens after this wanting? After this wanting happens, this feeling, I mean, the day before the girl was looking at herself in the mirror and she felt sort of complete, right? Now she feels incomplete. So how did it happen? Because of this. Does it make sense? Her feeling of being incomplete, or the feeling I had at that time of being incomplete, was based on there was something which I wanted but I didn't have. We used another word, feeling incomplete. We used another word for this before. What do you think that word was? Unsatisfied, yes. Feeling incomplete means it's like a feeling of a void, feeling something is lacking. Vexation. So it's actually ironic. It is because we have been influenced to think that happiness exists in the outside world, that what started to happen with our mind? Happiness was gained or happiness was lost? It was, is this gain of happiness or loss of happiness? An incomplete feeling. It's a loss, right? Not a gain. So this feeling of incompleteness is because of that, ultimately of this kind of view, because of wanting. So, can you understand the irony behind that? The promise of happiness in the outside world has given you, is actually what gives you, or is actually the reason why you are what? Unhappy. So in the name of happiness, unhappiness happens to us. So in the name of happiness, in the wrong place, unhappiness starts to happen with us. Right? So wherever there's wanting, a void is created. And the more the wanting, think about the more you want something, what happens? The more incomplete you feel with your life. So we haven't completed this circle. So actually this is a circle. It'll come back to here, but we are going to finish it step by step. So far you can understand this, I hope, yeah? Okay. Now when we're talking about vexation, I want to give you an analogy, a very simple analogy to understand what vexation is. Yeah? Vexation is like a skin disease in your body. Imagine that you have a rash. It's like a rash. Right now, I hope that your body is healthy. Or at least imagine you have a healthy body. So your skin is healthy. Is there any itchiness in your skin then? If you have a healthy skin, is there any itchiness? Is there any itchy feeling? No, right? It's just a peaceful and it's just a very calm experience. You are not bothered by your skin. Your skin is not bothering you. But once a rash happens on your skin, what happens? At least that spot will bother you, right? As strong as that rash is, that much it will bother you. So vexation is also, it's something that bothers you. And the bigger it gets, then what will happen? Then we need to do something to come out of it, right? Similarly, if there's a rash that is itching you, now we have to do something. Now we have to do activity, right? What is the activity you do when you feel a rash or when a rash is bothering you? You scratch. So that means now that the mind has started to believe that happiness exists in this object, it suffers, right? The mind suffers. It's no longer happy with the life that it has. It wants to experience this object, and it suffers from this vexation, from this rash. So Now you have to do activity. So what is the activity that we have to do when we have a rash? Scratching. What happens when we do that activity? We feel happy. We feel happy, right? How do we call that happiness? I used a word for this in the last few weeks. The happiness that when you have a rash, that means there's a feeling of vexation. Now when you scratch, what happens with that vexation? It reduces, it relieves. It is the relief of that vexation that we call pleasures. Do you remember the word pleasure that we used? Yeah, pleasure, right? So the activity is performed. Now imagine this example of the teenage girl, which has now started to accept that this dress that I have is not beautiful, I should be wearing this dress. So she has a wanting for that dress. She has a wanting for makeup, for maybe other things. Now she suffers from this vexation. So what does she have to do? She has to buy that dress. She has to change her body, or the clothes she's wearing on her body, or whatever the things, right? So this is all the activity she has to do. This is activity in the name of, we can say, happiness. I mean, this is what you see when you look on the street. Activity. Everywhere there's activity, busyness. Busy to find happiness. But actually it's not busy to find happiness as in, these are not things people like to do. This is because there's an engine driving their mind. What's the engine that drives everyone? That's driving us all? It's vexation, right? To come out of this feeling of vexation, activity happens. This can be mental activity, physical activity, verbal activity, all sorts of things. We plan how we can, first you plan, how can I get this? If you see a dress that you would like to buy, first you think about, how can I obtain this? Now you spend mental activity. Verbal activity. Maybe you talk to other people. Maybe you need to earn some money, so you first need to find a job. So you find a job, for that you need to talk. And you do bodily activities. So all these three activities are being used to acquire what it is that we desire. Right? And when we finally, it could take a long time, it could take only a short time, when we finally obtain what we want, what happens? The pleasure is experienced. So I'm not going to write down here, pleasure is experienced. I have written down what? Relief of vexation. That is important, because if I write down pleasure is experienced, you might think that actually there's something called pleasure that we have experienced. But all that really happens is the pain that was there goes away. Nothing more than that. When you scratch a wound on your body and you feel this sense of pleasure, what is that pleasure that you feel? Is it something additionally, something more than the pain or the itchiness which you had going away? or it is simply the pain that you have, it goes away. That's it. It's not something more than that, right? So you can't call it pleasure. You can't call it happiness. Did I give you the example of darkness and light? What is darkness? Darkness is absence of light. So that means, imagine in this room, you have light, right? Right now in this room there's a lot of light. So if I were to go and turn off all the lights, that means I'm closing the curtains so that light can no longer enter. I'm turning off these electrical lights by turning off the buttons. So I have removed all the light in this room. Now, do I need to bring in some darkness also? No, right? Because the darkness is not something additional. Here, it is simply the absence of the light, right? Similarly, do you see the difference between, if I say there's a relief of vexation that happens, in other words, there's a pain, and that pain slowly goes away, right? And when it goes away, the process of fading away, that happens. Now, if I were to say that pleasure happens, what might you think? If I were to say, if I were to say darkness happens, you might think that apart from the light being gone, also darkness comes. But actually, the only thing but since darkness is only the absence of light, all that really happens is the light goes out, right? So in other words, vexation is relief, but is there something called pleasure also additionally? No. Nothing like that. It's only because this view, is it a right view or a wrong view? The dress that people wanted to sell you, does it have pleasure? Can it have pleasure? Can it have happiness? No, it can't. Otherwise you should have experienced that happiness the first time you saw it. Then people wouldn't have to advertise anything to you. I mean, why is it that with advertising, for people to advertise things to you means, first you must be convinced that something has happiness for you to experience that. Otherwise you don't have to be convinced. You will feel it anyways. You look at the dress and you feel the happiness. Nobody has to tell you. And everybody should feel it, and everybody should feel it in the same way. But the fact that when you watched that dress, maybe before you were influenced, you didn't feel anything. Only later you felt something. So in other words, the dress is actually not anything you can ever expect to give you happiness, right? So that's why I say that this object, this is a wrong view. This is a wrong view. I gave you an explanation to why it is a wrong view. It is a wrong view because the first time you experienced that, did it give you happiness? The example of the song, when I listened to that song, it was not a great song. It became great after listening to it many times. So the song never changed. So the song is just an experience, not better or worse than any other sound. So therefore, if somebody were to tell you this song is very special, it has so much happiness inside, it can't be something true. It's a lie, right? It's a lie. So, but once you accept the lie, and once you accept that this lie might be true, and if you don't understand what's happening, now all these things will happen. You will want to experience it. You will want to experience the happiness somebody promised you within that object, within that dress, within that sound, within that song. Now you want it. Now when you want it, you feel incomplete. And you do a lot of activity, which also stresses you out. And once you find the object you were looking for, all that really happens is your stress goes away. Not something like happiness comes from the object, right? So all that happens is the stress goes away. That's it. The only problem in this situation here is that you don't realize that this is what happens. A mind which does not understand this cycle, what will it feel? What did you, when you experience happiness in your life so far, what did you always feel? Let's say you order something in a restaurant and you start eating it. Now you feel happiness, right? Where did that happiness come from? What do you feel? It came from the food, right? That's what you feel, right? But did it come from the food? What happened really? This happened. Not more, nothing more. So if our mind does not understand that, if our mind thinks that, as an example, darkness is not the absence of light, darkness is something separate, something additional, or in here, that actually pleasure is something that I have experienced. What I'm experiencing is happiness that this object gave me. Now it reinforces this kind of idea, right? So when this happiness, when we experience this happiness in our lives, for example, when we eat something, if we misinterpret that happiness we experience in the wrong way, that's when our problems start to grow and improve and increase. So from here there's a misinterpretation that can happen. We misinterpret the happiness that we feel, right? So in here you can see, now when I wanted to have this ball, this football, in the year 2002, I did a lot of activity. I asked my mother, hey, Mom, can I have this ball? I really want this. This would make me so happy. I will also work for this. I will work in the garden. I will cut the grass. I will cook. I will cook, or I will wash the dishes, so that you can buy this for me. Yeah, I was at that time 11 years old, right? So I did a lot of activity. At this time, the activity I was able to do was begging from my parents, because I didn't have my own money. I didn't have my own means. So the only thing I could do was begging. Now that when I was grown up, I didn't have to beg from my parents. I could simply go and find a job and earn my money, go to the shop and buy it. It's still the same thing, right? It's activity. Whether you beg from your parents or whether you go to the shop and we could say when I was 11, I was begging from my parents, and later on I was begging from other people. Maybe from girls, maybe from boss, maybe from whoever, right? Begging for, give me something that I want. Give me the thing that I want. That's what happens in this step. Once we are in this state of vexation, we become beggars. Beggars means now we are a slave. So we ask others to give us happiness. We run after the world to give us something so we can finally be happy. We are in that state of being, I mean, this is not meant in a disrespectful way, it's just like we stoop down so that we feel the need to go on our knees and asking others to have mercy on us, right? Something like that. So when I got this football and I had it in my hands, what did I feel? I felt so happy. I felt so happy, but because I experienced actually something more, because I thought that what I thought I had experienced was not what I experienced, right? What I experienced in this moment was only the relief of vexation. I was happy about this football, or this happiness came just because there was so much vexation. If somebody would have given me the ball as a present 2 years before, what would have happened? Nothing would have happened. It would not have given me any happiness, right? Because the ball has nothing to give me. There's no happiness in the ball. But since I wanted it, and since I believed that happiness was there, now when I got it, I experienced this relief of vexation. But what did I think I experienced? Happiness that this ball actually has. So now what has happened? What people told me to be true, I start to believe that. Not I start to believe that, the mind starts to believe that. The wrong view that has been implanted in the mind now starts to be accepted as reality. Right? So now it reinforces this idea. The happiness we experience reinforces the idea that if we don't understand this happiness, it reinforces the idea that actually this happiness exists in that object and this is something really valuable. And so we go on to... So this cycle, so this view reinforces, right? So that's why when you spend time around certain people, and if you don't understand the Dhamma, what happens is you will start to feel like them. If they enjoy drinking beer, the first beer you drink may be not interesting to you, but after a while you will enjoy it just like them. Because your views will become the same and you will start to feel the world according to the way that they feel it. That means actually your mind shapes its own version of reality. They tell you something which is a lie, but now since you don't know what is the reality, now you start to little by little believe that. And as you believe it, the mind creates a hallucination which makes you feel like this is actually reality. I mean, I'm still trying to find the good words to give you that clear idea, but what happens is it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right? A self-fulfilling prophecy. Self-fulfilling prophecy is something like, once you start to believe it, it becomes true. It becomes true to you, right? It's like I tell you that there are unicorns in this world, and you accept that. And once you accept that, now you start seeing them. You start seeing them, but they are not real, right? And they never existed, but you start seeing them because what? Because your mind produces them. Because your mind creates this. But when you see them, you think they are real. So now you believe I have told you the truth. I tell you there are unicorns. Now you start to look for them. And suddenly you see them. But you don't know that it is your mind that has created it. So what you start to feel is that I have told you the truth. Now you are living in your own kind of reality. So that's what happens in this circle. We are going to talk about this more, and I'm going to try to simplify this and show you it from other angles so you can understand this. But I hope you understood something at least today about how this cycle works. And of course, there's a misinterpretation, and that leads us to kind of the homework you can do for next week. When we misinterpret happiness that we experience, so when you eat something and you feel happiness, when you misinterpret that happiness you experience as something called happiness that actually exists in the object, that's when the problem continues, and that's when the cycle gets reinforced. Now you start to like this object more and more, right? You start to like this object more, then you want it, and perpetually this wanting increases. But as much as there's a misinterpretation, what we need to do, that's why I give you the homework, is to contemplate on what's really happening. So instead of, so you can, when you experience, whatever you experience, you need to interpret it correctly. For example, when you experience happiness in your life, ask yourself how that happiness happened, right? For example, you look at something and you feel really happy. It happens really quickly. This is practical contemplation. You look at something and you feel really happy. So what happens? First you see something. Let's say when you're on social media or somewhere, or you just look outside in some kind of, you see something. Very quickly, when seeing it, you also feel some sort of happiness. You feel that happiness. This happens in a fraction of a second. So you need to be mindful and you need to catch yourself. You see something and now you feel happy. So immediately what do we feel? This happiness is something this object gave me. It's something from there. Then what happens because of this happiness? We feel really good. So there's no problem with feeling good. We don't have to stop that. You don't have to stop this feeling of good. Nothing like that. But when this feeling of good happens, immediately what happens? A desire is arising, right? We want something. We want it more. We want more of that. Or we want to keep it. Or we want to enjoy it more. So then, this desire is born because we think this happiness came from the object. When this desire is born, now you start also experiencing the vexation again, right? So vexation. And maybe you can't see this image. We see something, we might feel happy. And immediately, because we are so used to thinking that this happiness came from the object, a desire is born, and we also feel vexation. And then we are back being a slave. All you really need to do is to realize that, how did this happiness happen? So when you vex, now the next time you see it again you feel happy. Right? All you really need to realize is that this happiness that you feel came because you were vexed in the first place. You were vexed in the first place, or there was a vexation in the mind in the first place. There was a vexation in the mind in the first place. And that is what you experience. You don't experience something that the object gave you. Once you come to this awareness, the desire will not happen. Right? This will no longer happen. Because now you have no reason to desire the object anymore. You only desire it if you feel the happiness you experience came from there. Otherwise, if it's just something that happens within the mind, based on a wrong belief, now in that moment you're in the right belief. You have the right mindfulness. So this thing will not happen anymore. And therefore you're done. Desire will not happen, vexation will not happen. And that's it. This is how you can contemplate. So, simply spoken, when you experience happiness in your life, ask yourself, is this happiness which I experience, or is this not simply the relief of a pressure that was there before? Because there was a belief of happiness in this. So if nothing else, try what you can try to do is, when you experience happiness, try to ask yourself, how did I feel before I felt happy? Right? How did you feel before that? When you order a pizza, the moment you start eating it, you feel happy. Is that because the pizza gave you that? No, because how did you take a moment to stop one moment before eating it? Before you start eating it, stop for one moment and ask yourself, how do I feel right now? And if you stop for a moment, you will realize what happens within you at that moment. What is it? You feel vexed. You feel that, you see that there's a pressure, right? Now you feel the pressure. Pressure, not pleasure, right? Pressure means vexation, suffering, tension, stress, incompleteness. And as much as you feel it, that much happy you will feel once it goes away. Right? So why do you feel that pressure, that stress? It is because, don't you feel that happiness can be there? No, but that is not something you ever experienced. You always ever experienced just the relief of vexation, right? So now you cracked open this code where you can change the way you think, and you can realize, okay, what I'm experiencing is not pleasure as something separate, as something additional. I'm just what is actually happening is only the vexation is releasing, nothing more. So we can't call it happiness. We can't call it happiness. So that's the right interpretation. So the right interpretation is simply to realize this. The right interpretation is simply to realize this is what has happened. Okay? This is what has happened, and not the object gave me happiness. This is what has happened. The whole thing, everything I told you today, To realize this is what happens is all you need to do to come out of this process. So it's a bit ironical. Yeah, I just write down right interpretation. So what does it mean, right interpretation? Interpreting as this is the process that has happened. So the thing is, this process is the most special process in this world because it happens when you don't know it happens. Right? This process happens when you don't know that it is that happens. That is, I don't know whether you can understand this, the depth of this, because this saucer here doesn't care whether you know about it or not. Whether you know it is here or not doesn't really matter. It is here and it does what it does, whether you know about it or not. But in your mind, there's one process, or in the mind, let's say, in the mind there can be a process that happens based on the not knowing of itself, right? Because in the mind, knowledge is something that we have in our mind, right? Knowledge. So in our mind, things can happen based on knowledge. Right? For example, if you think that this is something that you can use to shave yourself, and that's a knowledge, right? There's a knowledge, this is something to use for shaving. Now that is something you would do if you have that knowledge. If you don't have that knowledge, you wouldn't do that. So, so mental thoughts, mental activities depend on your knowledge. In other words, this process happens in the absence of the knowledge that this happens. So we'll go through this again step by step. Today I explained it to you in a rather complete way, but if you couldn't understand everything, that's fine. I hope you could understand at least something more in what's really going on. All of these things we don't do to become academics, and I have no intention whatsoever. I just want to give you simple tools and things you can practice to develop your mind to actually attain Nibbāna. Right? That's what we should be, that's what we are striving for. What Nibbāna means and how you can understand this. I will explain these things as well. You have some idea about it, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But even the topic of Nibbāna is very interesting, so it's something very practical. Not something esoteric, not something... it can be attained in our practical life. We don't have to go to a cave to attain Nibbāna, right? You don't have to give up your whole mundane existence to make steps towards Nibbāna. Yes, there are reasons why we have monks and practice monastics, and there's a reason for that. Later we will talk about these things more, but for now I just want you to think about these things. That doesn't mean you have to stop anything and that you have to change your lives or anything like that. It's simply understand what's going on in your life. Understand the happiness you experience in your life. If you can understand these concepts of beauty is not something that is in the object, it is what, if you can notice what vexation is and how it happens to you, how it happens in the mind, how it's based on wanting, and how views, the role of views, you can contemplate on each of these different steps and try to see how this happens within you, within others. Then you will understand the mind and you will understand yourself. And little by little, you will take different decisions, right? All of these things will make sense to you based on the merits that you do and your purity of heart. So, as I explained to you, and we will talk about this, I'm not only going to share with you the Dhamma every week. That would not be, that's not, I mean, Dhamma is not, we don't just need Dhamma. Today I explained a lot of Dhamma, but other days we are going to talk more about practical things. For example, the attitudes we have to instill in ourselves and the way we have to think about other people and how to soften our mind. These are also very important. Yeah? So all of these together will give you the result. Today we explained this process. So I hope you can apply this process in your life and see how these things connect. So you will. So for this week, I'll give you this task. When you experience happiness, ask yourself. Stop a moment and think about how you felt before that happened. You will find that most of the time you were in a state of vexation. And the other times when you didn't feel, because sometimes, for example, people can give you a surprise. Let's say you're staying at home, somebody comes and a friend visits you and you didn't expect him or her to come. Now you feel really, really happy. So you might say, well, isn't that happiness? Isn't that, I wasn't vexed. I wasn't waiting for him, but he came and I'm so happy. So in this situation, you experience happiness, but vexation is not always something you feel. It is there, but you don't have to feel it. It's like the air pressure. You don't always feel it. You feel when air pressure increases. So, for example, if you were to, for example, if you go to the diving in the ocean or diving in a swimming pool, if you dive down, you will feel increase of the pressure on your ears, right? So you will feel that, but vexation is not always something we feel. But it doesn't mean that it's not there. Right? So I think that there's a good task you can do. Just take a few moments every day. Look beyond the happiness that you feel. That is the meaning of Bhagavad. Okay, so then we'll finish the sermon for today and transfer the merits. Let us take a moment to transfer the merits that we have acquired today by making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, listening to the Dhamma by inviting the Swaminatha to hold the sermon, by offering flowers and laying pavada and other things. First and foremost, let us transfer these merits and express our gratitude to all the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasikas and upasakas who since time immemorial have protected and preserved the sublime teachings of the Buddha in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us today to study and understand the Dhamma. Let's also transfer these merits to all members of the Mahasangha present throughout the world, including the chief prelates of all of the chapters, who have dedicated their lives towards the noble path and have committed themselves towards the betterment of all sentient beings. Let's also transfer these merits to Guru Swaminatha as well as all the monks resident at the monastery, as well as the Anagarika and Anagarika attached to the monastery. Let's also transfer these merits and express our gratitude to all those who make great efforts to disseminate the teachings of the Buddha, be that by transliterating these sermons, sharing them out with others, or inviting others to join them. If any of them have been born in a woeful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in a blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path and attain supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our devotees, friends of the monastery, who for the sake of merits continue to sustain the Mahasangha by providing the four requisites, by extending their know-how and well wishes. Let's also transfer these merits to everyone who is involved in organizing this event and making this event possible, the chairman of the Royal International School as well as the staff and everyone who is involved in organizing or participating. And may through the power of these merits, they be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews and nieces, our elders, friends and acquaintances, employers and employees, and to all those teachers that we had and who have helped us and supported us in this journey of samsara. May through the power of these merits they be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to the Devas and Brahmas, spirits and demons, primarily the Sakadeva as well as all the numerous gods and deities who keep protecting and fulfilling the Sampradasasana. Let's also transfer these merits to our guardian deities who keep a watchful eye over us and keep us out of harm's way. May through the power of these merits they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our ancestors, to all those who have predeceased us, to all those who have been family and friends to us in this infinitely long journey in samsara. Let's also transfer these merits to all members of the armed forces as well as the police force who have sacrificed their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation. May all those who lost their lives in the war, be they friend or foe, rejoice in the merits we have acquired today. Let's also transfer these merits to all those who lost their lives in natural calamities such as tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides and pandemics, reminding ourselves that among them will be those who have been family and friends to us in this infinite long journey in samsara. May through the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in the woeful plane, they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Finally, let us all resolve that may through the power and blessings of all the merits we've acquired throughout the day, we be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of Arahants on this blessed land. And finally, let us all resolve that may through the power of all the merits we've acquired today, you and I and everyone who has helped to make this program a success, become Arahat and Hanse and Arahat meaning Hanse in this very life itself, and in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now the Mahasangha will transfer the blessings to you. Raga ginnin midetva, dvesha ginnin midetva, moha ginnin midetva, Nibbāna parama sukhayin, sukhita tara vetva. Nibbāna parama sukhayin, sukhita tara vetva. Mamada siyalu loka, siyalu sattvayo. Nibbāna parama sukhayin, sukhita tara vetva. Nibbāna parama sukhayin, sukhita tara vetva. Nibbāna parama sukhayin, sukhita tara සැප ලැබේවා. උන්වහන්ගේ සුවිසි අනන්ත මහා ගුණ පිළිෙන් සියලු ලෝක සියලු සත්වයෝ නිපාන පරම සුඛයෙන් සුඛිතව වෙත්වා. සාදු සාදු.